Hello and welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be going over the events of July, now already 17th, which is crazy. And I'm going to just start off with Kherson and the events ongoing over there. So I first want to say that the most interesting thing is that specifically in Mykolaiv there were some strikes. So the Russians, they targeted a liquid ammonia plant today. So that's one strike, and this is a daily occurrence obviously in Mykolaiv. We know that every day they strike the city. And now what we're seeing is that Ukraine, they're stockpiling on these HIMARS and all these MLRS systems. So they're stockpiling this NATO weaponry, and America seems to be giving them the green light to actually strike Crimea itself, which is pretty big news because it's usually like Russian territory. It's usually been off limits. Sure, we had the Ukrainian strikes on like Kursk and Belgorod, but those were with Tochka Uz, not with American weaponry, right? So now we're seeing a shift in policy towards the West allowing Ukraine to actually utilize those weapons. And basically what happened is Russia, specifically Medvedev, he said that any one of these if any one of these HIMARS is used on Russian territory itself, then there are going to be massive retaliatory strikes by Russia. We might even see mobilization, at least partial mobilization, because at that point Ukraine's HIMARS strikes, it actually becomes a threat to Russia itself, and it's no longer a special military operation. It turns into an actual, not defensive, but more of like defensive in the sense of protecting the Russian civilian population, because there have been Russian civilians who have been killed, and if HIMARS are actually going to hit cities in Crimea, then you will see those numbers go up very quickly. So this is no laughing matter for Russia. So that's where they draw the line, basically. So we'll have to see what happens with the HIMARS there. I also want to talk about the fact that Russia has a lot of weapon concentration in Crimea. Like there are a lot of they're stockpiling on ammunition and such in the peninsula, and all of that could be struck with the Ukrainian HIMARS. So those sites are under threat. Also, in the Mykolaiv region, Russia destroyed 4 command posts, and these command posts they were of the 59th Mechanized Brigades and the 242nd Battalion. So that is just some daily updates from that region. Then in Zaporizhia, there's not much in terms of like actual changes, but I do want to say that the fresh 65th Infantry Brigade, it was just deployed to this area around here with Shecherbaki and Mali Shecherbaki. So they were deployed to this region, and then in response, Russia heavily shelled the area and the forward positions of the Ukrainian military over there, so they had to retreat from their forward positions. So it's possible that this small settlement, Konovalova, that might be under Russian control, and there might be some fighting around the road that crosses through Shecherbaki. In addition, in Zaporizhia, there's a major humanitarian crisis now. A lack of supplies being distributed from the Ukrainian government, which has to do in part with the major economic devastation and the huge amount of debt that Ukraine is in. But you're seeing now these austerity measures in terms of the humanitarian aid. So people with outstanding debt in like the remaining 25% of Zaporizhia that's under Ukrainian control, they will now no longer be qualified for humanitarian assistance, which is a big deal for civilians over there. And besides that, Zaporizhia is not really a main sector of fighting, but we do see that both sides are sort of strengthening defensive positions. Not really any offensive operations in mind, but yeah, we are seeing that the defensive positions of both sides are getting fortified. We're even seeing that Russia is starting to redeploy Tachka-Uz, which is a good idea. Tachka-Uz, they aren't the most reliable, but we've seen throughout the war that with Ukraine utilizing them, that they can cause immense damage and wreak havoc on the opposing side. So I can see the logic in redeploying them. Now, in Avdiivka, nothing changed today, but we might see some fighting right south of Kamyanka in these not really like residential blocks, but it's like right on the northeastern outskirts of Avdiivka itself. So we're starting to see clashes over here, and we're also seeing heavy DPR bombardment of Ukrainian positions in Avdiivka. So keep that in mind. Now let's go to the main sector of fighting that we're all thinking about right now, which is the Bakhmut, Soledar, Seversk area. So today there weren't many changes that I could physically change on the map, and that's just a result of the fact that Russia hasn't really fully launched their offensive into these towns just yet, because they're still in that operational pause, quote unquote, but it's they've still ramped up attacks, as I've been talking about in the past few days. They have reached the outskirts of these cities, but today specifically we didn't see many changes to the front lines. We did get some video confirmation that the LPR DPR forces are on the outskirts of Soledar, but they didn't actually infiltrate the city. It's just drone footage showing Russian artillery attacking the town itself. We also had videos allegedly from Seversk of Russian forces in house-to-house combat, but who knows? That may not be from Seversk itself. It could be from the outskirts, the environs. We don't know. But in Seversk specifically, I want to mention that Ukraine's command post of the entire Seversk front, it used to be in Seversk itself, right? But now it was actually moved to Svanivka, and that sort of shows that the Ukrainians are anticipating that Seversk will fall, and that they'll have to sort of fall back to other towns in the area. And again, we're hearing more about fighting inside Ivano-Darivka itself, so we'll see if that falls in the next few days. It really should. It's an isolated town, and it does not really hold much significance to Ukraine. So we'll see what happens there. But another thing to mention in Seversk is that Ukraine actually rotated the 1st Infantry Battalion. So they're sending in, replacing units with heavy casualties with the 1st Infantry Battalion, and they're swiping them out. So it is possible still for Ukraine to rotate their units, which is pretty interesting, because there were a lot of Russian sources saying that Ukraine was unable to do that because of mass casualties and such. But apparently they're rotating the 1st Infantry Battalion, and this was actually something that I read from Russian sources, so it's probably true. And another thing to talk about is that in Bakhmut, and I want to talk about the city itself now, in Bakhmut, the 10th Guards Brigade is now installing mines throughout not only the industrial area, but the bridges. So that makes me think that they're not leaving the city without a fight, because they're heavily entrenching themselves in here. There were some incidents I talked about of some like nationalist battalions leaving the city, but you still have the general like Ukrainian army staying there for the time being. So that's interesting. Or it might just mean that when Ukraine withdraws, it's gonna like bog down Russian forces because they're gonna have to demine all of this, and it will like disrupt their attempts at advancing even more forward to like Kramatorsk or whatever. So it could be either one of those two scenarios. I think the defense scenario is more likely. But yeah. Now there was in the Russian Ministry of Defense now confirms this, that there has been heavy fighting in Bilohorivka. So I'm just gonna change that to contested, which is the color black. I use that color to show that a village is like contested between both sides. And then there's still fighting in Berestove. So we might see both of these towns falling very soon, and then that would like cause the fall of the entire front line around this Berestove Soledar line, which has been held for a while now. So the 1st, 2nd, and 14th Ukrainian infantry battalions are the ones that are holding this line, and they've been suffering very heavy casualties over the past few days. But they're being reinforced with a lot of ammo from this city over here, Pokrovsk, which is a key like junction for supplies. And from that road from Pokrovsk all the way to Bakhmut and then to the Soledar Berestove line, you're seeing ammo and other equipment being transferred. And additionally, in this front, you're seeing a lot of Ukrainian mortars and counter batteries being launched towards the Russian positions in the LPR territory. So in areas like Zolotarivka or in Verkhonekamyanske, Vovchoyarivka, Bilohorivka, even in the DPR territory, in this town, you're seeing a lot of shelling from the Ukrainian troops, which shows that they do have the capabilities to strike back, and they don't have that big of a shortage in terms of artillery batteries. So that's mainly it for the Donetsk front. Donetsk itself is being fortified with HIMARS, these new HIMARS systems, but there was one HIMARS system that was destroyed today by Russian forces, and they did provide a video, so we know it's true. And additionally, one refueling vehicle was destroyed, and this was in Krasnoarmeysk. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. And it's supposedly in the Donetsk region, but yeah, I might be wrong about that. So anyway, let's go to the Kharkov front now. So in the Kharkov front, nothing much. What I would like to say is that one Su-25 was shot down today in this sector of fighting, and another UAV was shot down. But yeah, not much besides that. There was a strike today on Chuhuiv on the 92nd Mechanized Brigade, and according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, 200 troops were eliminated, quote unquote. I don't know if that's killed or wounded, but yeah, those people will not be partaking in the hostilities from now on. And 10 armored vehicles were also destroyed, and we're seeing a lot of desertions on this front, mass desertions, because this is, even though it's a static front line, this is one of the front lines with the most amount of casualties. So yeah, you are seeing a lot of people just abandoning their positions. Many of these people were conscripted in the first, second, third rounds of mobilization, and they're not intently keen on fighting dragged out war, so it's understandable. And in addition, another thing that I'd like to note that I read, and of course take this with a grain of salt. This is more of like a miscellaneous point, not related to the like front lines of the war, but it is still interesting. The like LPR sources, they're saying that they found biolabs, like American biolabs in the cities of Rubizhny and in Severodonetsk. And I think that even if this is not true, it would make the most sense for biolabs to be found in these cities because they have huge industrial plants in both cities with like all these chemical like plants and all these manufacturing facilities. The Rubizhny plant, if I had to guess, it would be like in the southern area where you have the like really industrialized area, which is like less filled with with like residential areas, and it's more of a key hub for production of like nitrogen and all these other chemicals. But then in Severodonetsk, it would probably be in the western region around the Azot plant. So this is sort of goes along with Russia's narrative about the biolabs that has been talked about a lot, especially at the beginning of the war, but it got pretty silenced by a lot of social media outlets, unfortunately. So we don't really know if the allegations of like we do know that there were biolabs for sure. That's been confirmed. There were like over 30 of them. It was written in official like U.S. aid documents, or like the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm pretty sure they had like connections to building these pathogen labs in Ukraine. But people could like make the argument that this was not meant to be like an offensive action towards Russia. So I want to just be fair and put that out there. There's no way to know for sure if there was malintent involved. People could like assume that, and if evidence comes to light that there was, then it's a travesty that we can't really talk about it on these social media websites. That's my opinion on it. And now I'm going to talk about the a statement from the chief of staff for the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, so Tony Radakin. He says that the Russians have lost 30% of their combat capability since the start of the war, and his sources are saying 50,000 troops, Russian troops, killed in action or wounded in action, and that 5,000 units of equipment were destroyed. So I don't. Again, this is just the Ukrainian allegations, so take it with a grain of salt. I gave the numbers that the Ukrainian Minister of Defense estimated for Ukraine yesterday. He was saying that Ukrainian casualties, he hoped that they would be under 100,000. So that's saying a lot. But now we have their statement on the amount of Russian casualties. And now, last thing, the EU, they announced that they would be banning the import of Russian gold. But the funny thing about this ban is that it actually excludes jewelry. So people still want to get their golden necklaces from Russia, I guess. So in regards to the situation, the oil situation, the U.S. has been like constantly pressuring OPEC to increase its production. And specifically, they've been talking to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. And the interesting thing about Saudi Arabia is that Saudi Arabia has doubled its fuel imports from Russia in the second fiscal quarter this year, which is pretty funny because what Saudi Arabia is doing is that they're getting their oil from Russia and then just giving that to the United States and the EU. So it basically makes the sanctions on Russia superfluous because you're just getting it secondhand from Russian sources. And that's pretty funny, but what can you expect? At least in my opinion, these sanctions have backfired. But it's possible that they could have worked if the United States and EU had maybe, I don't know, recognized Venezuela and then started like strengthening ties with Venezuela. Maybe they could have gotten some oil from there, some oil from Iran, because I'm sure Iran would be eager to actually sell their oil in the market for once. Maybe they could have just like tapped even more into the strategic petroleum reserves and like focus on self-sufficiency instead of getting all of these like oil and gas shipments from abroad. And also, in the case of Germany, actually embracing nuclear energy. Now they're going to have to like use wood rationing to like make fires and stuff in the winter. It's like they're going back to the Stone Age or something. But yeah, that's it for today. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.